Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. I hope you guys are having a good start to your day today. I do want to give a little bit of a warning about today's episode. I feel like the comment section is going to be on fire. I feel like there's going to be a lot of differing opinions. So I just ask ahead of time, guys, let's just all keep it peaceful. Let's keep it respectful. We may not all agree on certain things, but I have a feeling things are going to get a little controversial. But I just want to kind of give that little disclaimer ahead of time so that we can all just still be friends after this. So let me kind of just set the stage for you, all right? Imagine that somebody that you love goes missing. So you start out just feeling a little bit uneasy, wondering why maybe they're flaking on plans that you made together, why they're not answering their phone. But then you finally realize that something is wrong. So you go to the police. You tape up missing persons flyers all over the place. You start going door to door. You start doing everything that you can think of. And now imagine that the police find the person who hurt your friend, the person who's responsible. It's someone who was supposed to keep them safe, somebody who was supposed to keep them protected. But instead, that person abused everybody's trust, and it was the ultimate betrayal. That all sounds bad, right? But now let me put one more spin on that story. Let's say that that person who took your friend, who hurt your friend, the person who had everybody trusting them only to end up showing their true self, well, imagine that this wasn't the first time that they did something like this. It wasn't even the second or the third time. This person has years and years of experience hurting different people around them. It's happened so many times that they don't even bother to really hide what they're doing anymore. Tons of people know that this person is dangerous, violent, and they've all decided not to even lift a finger to stop them. So now your friend has gone missing and is possibly dead. The whole situation could have been prevented, but nobody could be bothered to do anything about somebody who had already this terrible, terrible violent track record. Does that make you angry? If so, you're definitely not alone, because in today's episode, I'm not just talking about a kidnapping and a murder. I'm talking about a crime that sparked an actual protest movement where an entire community of vulnerable women decided that they finally had had enough. So guys, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so if you have watched this show before, you have probably heard me rave about Beam Dream. Like a lot of people, I used to struggle with poor sleep, and I always felt tired throughout the day, and I never really realized how much it was affecting my life until I was able to actually start getting amazing sleep thanks to Beam. My husband first introduced it to me about a year ago now. I drink it every single night religiously. They're also now a partner of the channel because I love it so much. I've gotten all my friends and family hooked on it, and so many of you guys even came up to me at CrimeCon saying how obsessed you are with it now, how it helped you sleep, how it helped your husband sleep, and it just makes me so happy. And when they reached out to me to do a custom flavor, I literally jumped at the chance. So I have officially partnered with them to create an exclusive flavor of their best-selling sleep blend. It pairs two of my favorite flavors together, creamy caramel and salted chocolate, and it literally tastes like this sweet, salty dessert, and the best part is it's only 15 calories. There's also no added sugar, so there's no guilt. It's this perfect sweet treat right before bed. It's the best. I drink it 30 minutes before I want to be asleep, and it is like poof magic. Plus, there's no grogginess the next morning like you get with other sleep aids because they use all natural ingredients. And today I have such a special perk for all of you listeners because for a limited time, you can get up to 40% off when you try my limited edition flavor. So guys, now is your time if you haven't tried it yet, but I am telling you, order soon because there is a limited supply of my exclusive salty chocolate caramel dream. It is so good, guys. Just click the link below or scan the QR code and use code 10TOLIFE before it sells out. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. I know you will, and sweet dreams. Sarah Everard was a beautiful 33-year-old marketing executive from England. She had thick blonde hair, dimples when she smiled, but she really wanted to live a fast-paced life in the big city. So after she graduated from college in 2008, she really just uprooted everything that she had ever known, and she moved to London, which was about 5 hours away from where she had grown up. Now basically, she traded everything that was familiar for a nice place in Brixton. Brixton was a pretty trendy neighborhood. It was full of PR and marketing companies, so it made sense, and it also was a good place to settle down, build a new career. And in fact, by 2021, Sarah had landed a really great job as a marketing manager at a digital agency called Flipside Group. So Sarah had a good job, and she also had a really good relationship with her boyfriend, 34-year-old Josh Loweth. The two of them, they were in it for the long term, and from what I can tell, they were just super into each other. In fact, he lived just a few blocks away. So even when they didn't make concrete plans with one another, they were still running into each other on the street, stopping by to say hi. They were in constant communication. Sarah also had a pretty active social life, and on the evening of Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021, she went over to a friend's house in Clapham. They hung out for a little bit, they were drinking wine, they were catching up on life, but Sarah had work the next day, so she knew that she shouldn't stay out too late. So at around 9 p.m., Sarah said it was time to head home for the evening. Now when she left, Sarah called Josh to kind of kill some time during her 2.5-mile walk from her friend's house back to her apartment. And you might be thinking that a 2.5-mile walk alone at night seems like a lot, but remember, Sarah was used to walking everywhere. It had been her main way of getting around for years at this point. Plus, this also was the height of COVID, and in London in particular, government officials were saying that nobody should take public transportation unless it was an absolute emergency. Their thought process was that the smaller the number of people crammed into a small space like a bus or whatever it might be, it would be the better, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best piece of advice because it meant that people like Sarah sometimes had to go on these super long walks all alone after dark without any witnesses around. So about 14 minutes into her walk, Sarah ended up hanging up the phone with Josh. She said she was just going to spend the rest of her time walking home, listening to music with her headphones on, just kind of enjoying the walk. I remember that used to be my favorite part about living in New York. I would just pop my headphones in and listen to podcasts, listen to music, and there was something peaceful about that. However, the problem was this time wasn't going to be like the other times that Sarah did this, because it was the last time that Josh ever heard from her. The following morning was a Thursday, and Sarah didn't show up to a work meeting, and this was not like her at all. And on top of that, Josh had spent the whole day calling her, texting her, just like normal. But Sarah never replied. She also ghosted on some plans that she had made with him during the day. So finally, Josh decided to call the police around 8 p.m. He wanted to let them know Sarah's MIA. Something here feels fishy. Something here doesn't feel right. And it didn't take them very long to figure out that nobody had seen Sarah all day long. In fact, the last time that anybody knew that she was for sure even alive was during that long walk home. So the police went through all the surveillance cameras in the area, hoping that they might be able to spot something. And luckily, police were able to find Sarah pretty quickly. She stood out in the footage because she was wearing these really bright colored clothing. It just really popped on screen. It was, think a bright turquoise jacket with pink lining, matching pink and turquoise colored shoes, pattern leggings, very difficult to miss. She showed up in 3 different clips. The first one was from 9:15 p.m. Another one was from 9:28 p.m. And then the last was from 9:32 p.m. And that final clip had been recorded by a police car. But nothing in any of these videos seemed out of the ordinary. Sarah was just walking home normally, like any other night out after she was returning home. So next, the police looked at every single camera that was close to her apartment to see if they could find any evidence that she actually made it home. They couldn't find anything. So basically, the police had confirmed at this point that whatever happened, it happened during Sarah's walk. But they didn't really have any real leads about what actually became of her. They didn't know if she was met with foul play, if maybe she was in some kind of accident. They were even open to the possibility that maybe she had run off, like maybe she wanted to start a new life, and that was the night that she decided it was time to disappear. Now, of course, her family did not buy that last theory, not even a tiny little bit. They knew that Sarah would never just take off. She loved her family, she loved her boyfriend, her job. There was no motive whatsoever for her to just run away. So they decided to take to the streets. They were hanging up flyers everywhere, going door to door, all in hopes that somebody might recognize their daughter and share a tip. Then, a few days later on Saturday, the Metropolitan Police, or the MET I should say, put out a plea to the public. Now, from what I can tell, they didn't have any new leads or anything like that, but for whatever reason, they now had decided and had agreed with Sarah's family that they didn't just think that she ran away anymore. They thought that something was up. So in their public statement, they said that this situation was serious. They also released one of the pictures of her from that surveillance camera, in that bright turquoise jacket. They released this so that the public knew what they were looking for, who they were looking for. The very next day, the police released even more footage that they had. This footage was from a ring cam, and it showed Sarah walking through Brixton. They also shared some video that wasn't even from the walk where she went missing. They had pulled surveillance clips of her buying wine at a store before she got to her friend's house that evening. So now that all of these clips were now released, all of the tips started rolling in. It was a lot for the police to sort through, to see what was useful and what wasn't. So this was when the Scotland Yard's Specialist Crime Command stepped in. Now you've probably heard the words Scotland Yard a bunch of times if you like watching Agatha Christie or Sherlock Holmes stories, anything like that. And it's basically the main police force that handles issues in all of London's 32 boroughs. So they came on board in Sarah's case because they thought that her disappearance was, quote, complex. That was their word. And the Specialist Crime Command focuses on major crimes, which meant that the police now thought that something criminal had happened here. Not only were they no longer treating Sarah like a runaway, but they also didn't think that she had been in an accident either. Now, as for what exactly happened to her, Scotland Yard didn't really know yet. In a public announcement, they basically admitted that it could have been a kidnapping, it could have been a murder, or something else. I mean, they weren't ruling anything out. The good news is that by Monday, the police had received over 120 tips, and the officers were investigating all of them. They ended up visiting 750 different homes in the area. All these homes were either by Sarah's apartment or by her friend's place, plus anywhere else that she might have stopped along the way between them. They also made another plea to the public, asking for everyone to check their surveillance cameras, if they had any on their houses or their cars. The day after that, they brought in dogs to help sniff for clues. They even sent a diving team over to a local pond. It wasn't too far from Sarah's friend's apartment, and the police figured that if Sarah had been killed, the murderer might have dumped her body there. But the divers didn't find anything, and neither did the dogs. And the tips didn't generate any useful leads either. So by this point, you couldn't even walk past a shop or a telephone pole in the neighborhood without seeing Sarah's face plastered all over it. I mean, the missing posters were everywhere. And her friends and family got the hashtag Sarah Everard trending as well. And it did well enough that pretty soon everyone in London knew to look for Sarah, not just the people who were living in Brixton. And that's when the first real lead came through. Somebody gave the police a clip that had been taken from a camera on a London bus. It showed Sarah on the night that she disappeared. She was chatting with a man who was standing near a parked car. It was a white four-door car with its hazard lights on. Now specifically, that car was a Vauxhall Astra. And the footage showed them on the side of the road in Poinders Court in South London, which was about a mile away from Sarah's home. The car doors were open, but the footage was blurry, and it was hard to see who Sarah was talking to. Basically, she and the guy looked more like a pair of white ghosts than actual people in this footage. But even though the police didn't know who the man was, they knew about the car, and they were able to pull even more clips from other cameras in the area because of this, including some from later on in the evening, which showed Sarah in the back seat of this man's car. So now the police knew that they needed to find this man, and pretty fast. Now, the good news was that in one of those clips, they were able to read the license plate. The car was from an Enterprise rent-a-car in Dover, England, which was about 2 hours away from Brixton. So, the detectives called up the Enterprise and they asked who was the last person to rent that car. And the Enterprise employee said that it was 48-year-old Wayne Couzens. The Enterprise employee also gave the police Wayne's phone number, which he used when he first picked up the car and had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. He had written that number down. So the detectives ran the phone number, and sure enough, it came back as one of their own. Yes, Wayne was a police officer. Specifically, he was part of the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, which meant that on top of being a regular officer, he also worked at the Houses of Parliament, as in the center of British government, the Palace of Westminster and Big Ben. So I feel like it's pretty safe to say that Wayne was definitely trusted in the community. And Wayne didn't make a last-minute decision to rent the car. He had booked that reservation a week in advance. He picked it up a few days before Sarah went missing, and then she disappeared a few hours after Wayne wrapped up in a 12-hour shift at the US Embassy in London. So the police weren't sure what to make of that, particularly the detail about Wayne reserving the car a few days before Sarah went missing. Maybe it meant that he had something planned in advance, or maybe there was more to it. Maybe there was something more going on. But either way, they knew that they had to talk to Wayne. So a team sped off to go interview him. They were using their sirens and everything, and they were basically making a scene on their way to his house. And apparently when Wayne answered the door, he saw all of these squad cars and he just completely turned gray.
Do you know anything about what happened to her?
I know that she went missing up in London somewhere, about a week ago or so, just from what I got on the news.
Okay. Have you ever personally met her?
No, not personally, no.
you had any interactions with her at all?
Why would I have personal interactions with her?
Well, it's very difficult because I can't go into a lot of the evidence because obviously that's not part of what an urgent interview is. Okay, this interview is just about trying to find her because
Sure.
she's been missing for a while now.
I'm sat in handcuffs and you're asking me what I know her, so you must have something to say that I know her.
Well, as I said, you've been arrested on suspicion of kidnap, and we believe that you've been involved in her disappearance and taking her away from her family.
Okay.
So we are trying to find her. Obviously, everybody is very worried about her. She's got, parents. She's got she's got siblings. She's got a boyfriend. There's a lot of people that care about her.
Sure.
You've seen her on the news. The number of people that are reaching out about her.
Sure.
Out there looking for her every day, and she's missing. And our primary job here is to find her and to try and find her safe and well.
Okay.
Now we believe that you know something about where she is, and that's why we're here to look for her and to try and find her, and that's why we're talking to you now, is to try and get you to have a good think about it and tell us anything you can about where we might be able to find her.
Okay. Well, I am in financial, and I've been lent on by I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever. And they told me, right, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. So I said, not happening. And it then came through that they're going to harm my family, take them away, and they'll use them instead. At that point I had no option to try and find somebody. So I don't, there's a couple of names. I was told a place to take her. That's it. That is all I know.
Now, in that clip, when the officer said that this was an urgent interview, that basically meant that they thought that somebody was in great danger and that there wasn't any time to waste. And in that kind of situation in the UK, the priority is basically on getting information as quickly as possible. So in Wayne's case, the officers didn't take him to the station and book him. Even that would take too much time. They basically barged into his house and they questioned him right then and there. They didn't even let him call a lawyer. Because during an urgent interview like this one, people like Wayne don't have a legal right to one. That would all come later when, right now, the top priority was finding Sarah and getting her home alive. So they sat Wayne down for questioning, and they also slapped some handcuffs on him. And even though he hadn't left his house yet, Wayne was technically under arrest on suspicion of a kidnapping. The police also arrested his wife, 33-year-old Elena Cousins. Because at first, the detectives thought that maybe she might have helped Wayne kidnap Sarah or even cover it up. However, after a little bit of questioning, they realized that she had absolutely no clue about anything that was going on, so they let her go. And Wayne also tried to play innocent. He tried to act like he didn't know anything. But in no time at all, he basically went from saying he had no idea where Sarah was to then telling them this very elaborate and convoluted story. Wayne told the police that he was deeply in debt to the tune of roughly £29,000, or equivalent to about $39,000. And that part was true. Wayne was truly and sincerely bad with money. And to hear Wayne tell it, he also had a thing for sex workers. Not great, since like I said before, Wayne had a family, a wife and 2 kids. But Wayne said that he was cheating on his wife with one sex worker in particular, who he met up with every single week. And well, apparently, the last time that he saw her, Wayne didn't have enough money to cover all of her services. So in turn, the sex worker brought in her manager, otherwise known as her pimp. And her manager, in this case, was a part of a very powerful Eastern European gang. They gave Wayne 3 options: either pay up, kidnap some other woman who they could force into doing sex work to cover his debt, or they were going to hurt Wayne's family and make them do the sex work instead. Now, obviously, this story is already pretty weird. That's not exactly how human solicitation and trafficking works. And I don't know why Wayne thought that it would help his case. And they're saying that he kidnapped Sarah off the street to force her into a life of sex work. That's not a good reason to kidnap somebody. But in any event, this was his story, and this is what he was saying happened. But he also insisted that Sarah was still alive. She was fine. and he said that the police needed to look at the gang members if they wanted to find her. Now, of course, the detectives did not believe a word of what he said, especially once they looked at his phone records, and they realized that 40 minutes before they showed up, he was deleting things off of his phone. So that evening, they announced that they had a man in custody. They didn't share Wayne's identity, but they did say that he was a Met police officer, and they said that they thought that he had been involved in Sarah's disappearance. Now, this was especially shocking. I mean, not only to Sarah's friends and family members, but also the community, because they had never even heard of Wayne. They couldn't think of any reason that he would want to hurt Sarah. I mean, frankly, there wasn't even any reason for him to be in London at all that night. He lived in Deal, Kent, which was almost 2 hours away. Add in that, again, this was the height of COVID. I mean, people weren't supposed to be out and about unless they had to be. There was zero good reason for Wayne to be anywhere in Sarah's general vicinity at all, which meant that he didn't have a clear motive. And while the police were still pretty confident that he did it, they still needed to learn more about it. So the day after Wayne was arrested, they ended up searching his home. When they didn't find anything there, though, they expanded the search to the surrounding area. But again, nothing. It was like Sarah had just vanished into thin air. Now, I'm not sure what exactly happened after that, if they double-checked their evidence and maybe found something new, or if there was some discovery that they didn't release to the public. But less than 24 hours after Wayne's arrest, the police upgraded the charges against him from suspicion of kidnapping to murder. And like I said, I don't know exactly what made them make that call. I do know, though, that at some point the investigators had found small amounts of blood and semen on the passenger seat of Wayne's personal car. Not the rental, but the car that Wayne owned. And there was also blood in the back of the car, too. And the blood was a match for Sarah. And the semen came from Wayne. Which this, of course, led investigators to believe that Wayne may have attacked Sarah in his car sometime after he kidnapped her in the rental, and then before he murdered her. They also found the SIM card to Sarah's phone, and it was broken. And in an even grosser discovery, there were Velcro straps, a new condom, lubricant, plastic gloves, a knife, a headlamp, and hair ties, all in the car. Now, it's not entirely clear what the hair ties were used for, but I am going to come back to that point. It's also notable that around this time, the detectives were doing a pretty big deep dive into Wayne's background, trying to figure out who he was, what made him tick, what was he all about. On the surface, Wayne seemed like a nice, normal guy. He and his wife Elena had been together for 16 years, their kids seemed healthy and happy, and Wayne also came across as a good neighbor, the kind of person that you might invite over to watch a game, have a few beers with, hang out with. But all you had to really do was just scratch the surface just a tiny little bit, and Wayne had a super dark history. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin with it. But let's just start with the nickname that the other police officers who worked with Wayne gave him. The nickname? The Rapist. Guys, pause for dramatic effect. I'm sorry, your coworkers who are also police officers are nicknaming you that? And there's not red flags going off? There's not alarm bells going off? This already makes me wonder, like, how does someone with a nickname like that work as a cop or even get a job as a cop in the first place? Especially when you consider that that nickname might have been based on his long history of sexual aggression. I mean, there were reports, guys, going back decades. Reports against him for all kinds of horrific things. In 1995, Wayne allegedly pulled a knife on a woman in London and tried to force her to then go somewhere with him. The victim managed to get away and she filed a report, but since she didn't know Wayne, she couldn't provide a name or anything like that, so he was never arrested, he was never questioned. And the only reason we even know about this story is because the woman came forward after Wayne was arrested in Sarah's case. She recognized him as the man who had tried to kidnap her all of those years ago. Then, in 2006, he sexually assaulted another woman, which, get used to this pattern, guys, because you're going to be hearing it quite a bit in this case. But once again, this did not result in his arrest or any charges being filed against him. There were at least 4 other incidents where Wayne either attacked somebody in a sexual way or tried to attack them. Incidents which weren't reported to the police at the time. Those survivors all came out after the fact, when they saw Wayne on the news and they recognized him. Most of his victims were women, but there was at least one report where he tried to harm a man who was in drag. So I don't know if that means that Wayne was just willing to go after anyone or if he didn't realize the man's gender, and ultimately, it just doesn't matter. Wayne had a long enough track record to fill a book. And who knows how many other survivors never even bothered to come forward, even after his arrest. Then in 2008, he exposed himself to yet another poor, unsuspecting woman. Again, this was in London. She filed a report against him, but at the time, nobody connected Wayne with the incident. Again. Another time in 2015, Wayne flashed somebody, and they saw him get into his car afterward. They told the police his license plate number, but for whatever reason, the investigators didn't follow up, and they never charged Wayne with anything. There were also accusations that Wayne had committed some kind of sex crime against a child. At the time, he was in his early 20s, and the victim was in her early teens. Now, understandably, given that this girl was a minor, there hasn't been much about this incident released to the public. But on top of all of that, everything we just went through, some people have said that Wayne also owned pornography, all with underage children. And what's crazy is he apparently didn't even try to hide this. He liked to leave this disturbing and suggestive material just laying out around in the open for his friends to see. Truly disgusting. Then at one point when he was doing some volunteer work, he pulled the same move with pornography featuring animals. Bestiality. Which, if you guys don't know what bestiality means, just like Google it. I can't even explain it here. It's absolutely disgusting. But all to say, Wayne was a creep. I think we all get that now, right? And what's crazy is he pulled all of this crap before he even joined the police in the fall of 2018. So have a moment to sit with that. Pick your jaw up from off the floor. Because with all of that criminal record, he still passed all the background checks. He got all of the clearances, everything that he needed to become a police officer. And I know that in some of these cases, the survivors didn't come out until later, but Wayne was investigated based on allegations against him in 2015. And then again, 3 years after he started working as a police officer in 2021. Neither investigation found anything though, which it doesn't mean that there was a lack of evidence or that a witness refused to talk or something, because according to an internal report, both of those investigations were destined to fail from the start. It was as if Wayne's police officer friends decided in advance that they were just going to find him innocent, and then they only saw what they wanted to see. A couple of years after he joined the force, he transferred to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch, which was, remember, where he was working at the time of Sarah's disappearance. During that time, particularly around 2019, he had a WhatsApp account, and he used this to send a bunch of messages to his coworkers on the force. They were vile, racist, sexist, and utterly appalling. I mean, they joked about sexual assault, they joked about so much, you name it. So it's not like these other detectives didn't know who Wayne was, what he was really like, what made him tick. They just didn't care. And it was like they couldn't be bothered to do anything to keep him in line. So he kept on being a garbage fire of a human being. And on 2 separate occasions, Wayne even exposed himself to people working in a McDonald's. The second time when he ordered his food, the woman who was waiting on him got everything ready, packed it up, and when she turned around to hand it to him, his pants and his underwear were down, all the way down to his ankles. Disgusting. And right after he harassed this poor woman who was just trying to do her job, he just went back to work, like nothing ever happened. I don't get it, especially because this all happened, no exaggeration, 3 days before Wayne kidnapped Sarah. I mean, the McDonald's employee even filed a complaint. And unlike some of the other survivors, she knew who Wayne was. The police literally had this report in their hands. It told them that this guy had at least one very recent incident of improper sexual behavior. And we know that there were a lot more than that too. But even if this was somehow the only thing that the detectives knew about Wayne, that still should have been enough to make them say like, hey, maybe we should take a closer look at our buddy, or at least maybe take him off duty for a little while we look into it. But instead, he was free to live his life. He was free to keep on hurting people left and right. And I've even heard some speculation that Wayne was starting to feel like he could get away with anything. Specifically because he never had to face any consequences, none whatsoever. Which, why wouldn't he assume that he was untouchable at that point? And just think, what if at some point somebody actually sat him down and said like, hey, you gotta knock this off, you gotta quit it. Or even better than that, I don't know, maybe actually press charges? Maybe if somebody had tried to keep him accountable, keep him in line, Wayne wouldn't have kept escalating, and escalating right up until Sarah went missing. The Independent Office for Police Conduct didn't even bother investigating him until after everything with Sarah went down. Then they made a statement. Their statement said, our investigations into the Met and Kent's police handling of the indecent exposure allegations highlighted that there is no system in place to alert forces when a police officer becomes a crime suspect. which for the record is not an actual explanation. If you don't have a system in place to identify police officers who are a danger to society, maybe, I don't know, create a system, do something. It seems like we've seen so oftentimes that people in powerful positions are the predators. So maybe as a police officer who's supposed to keep the community safe, you realize maybe we do need to put systems in place to protect the community because we employ people in power, and people in power often prey on other people. I mean, I just can't overstate how frustrating all of this is and how horrible it is looking back. Wayne was pretty much openly harming woman after woman after woman, and he was just getting away with it the whole time. And as frustrating as that is, at least this deep dive into Wayne's background did give the police one important lead. They found a piece of land in Hodeswoods near Ashford, which was a little less than an hour away from where Wayne lived. And Wayne had actually bought that area in 2019, which was a little random. It wasn't clear what he had been doing with it. But thanks to all of these surveillance camera clips and phone records and everything else, the detectives realized that Wayne went there with his family just a couple of days after Sarah's disappearance. He told his friends that he just wanted to spend a relaxing day hanging out and enjoying everything. But thanks to his phone's GPS, the investigators knew that he was also there at 11:28 p.m., the same night he went there with his kids. Which I have to say, that's a weird time to be like hanging out all by yourself in the middle of the woods, especially if you try to hide evidence later, because remember, Wayne tried to erase a bunch of data from his phone, including those GPS records. Now, of course, with the digital data, nothing ever gets deleted for good. So it didn't take too much digging for the police to figure out that he was being very, very suspicious. So exactly 1 week after Sarah disappeared, the detectives went and they searched that wooded area. And they found 2 large construction bags in a pond about 300 feet outside of Wayne's property line. Now, construction bags, which are sometimes also called builder bags, are like garbage bags, but way, way, way more durable. So the police opened up those bags, and inside they found burned, decomposing human remains. They were so damaged that the only way to confirm the person's identity was by pulling the dental records. And that's how the police learned that it was Sarah. However, they couldn't determine her cause of death at the time. And this was because whoever killed Sarah went to pretty extreme lengths to try and destroy the evidence. See, the detectives also found a refrigerator, which had burn marks all over it, and it was tipped over. So the police thought that Sarah might have been shoved inside that refrigerator and then set on fire. The idea being that the fridge would stop the fire from spreading and burning the entire forest down. Now, the one good bit of news is that the police thought that this all happened after Sarah was already dead. I can't imagine how horrific it would be to be shut in a refrigerator and burned alive. I mean, can you imagine how traumatic that would be? But what they also discovered is that when her killer burned her body, Sarah wasn't wearing a shirt or pants. And this told a pretty compelling story, especially when you look at Wayne's long history of sexual attacks. In addition to trying to cover up Sarah's remains, her killer also apparently did something with her phone, because no matter how hard the detectives looked, they couldn't find her phone anywhere, just that broken SIM card. Eventually, after all of their searching, they decided the phone, it just wasn't there. So the next step was for the police to notify Sarah's family of her death, and they also publicly announced it. And this was a shock. I mean, Sarah's disappearance had been such big news, but even though the case had been classified as a murder already, some people were still hoping that she might still be alive. I also think a lot of people related to her, especially young women who had moved to the city for their careers. So really, it felt like anyone could have died exactly the way that she did. So her murder felt extra personal, even for people who never had met her. Some of Sarah's loved ones tried to put together a vigil. Basically, they wanted to honor her. They wanted to mourn her and say goodbye. However, because of COVID restrictions, there was no way to organize this gathering in a safe and legal way. So because of that, it got canceled. But the truth was, as sad as everybody was, people were pissed, especially the women of London. I mean, you don't need to be that into true crime to know that it is so common for women in particular to become victims of violent acts. Whether it's going out to a bar, feeling like you can never take your eyes off of your drink because somebody might tamper with it and slip something in it, or texting a friend before you go on a first date so they know that something may have happened if you just go missing, sharing your tracking with them, sharing your location. I mean, we take lots of precautions. I know everybody does, but women especially. Hell, you can't even go for a jog in the middle of the day anymore without fear of being attacked. It is horrible. I mean, so many people have to spend their lives constantly on edge, watching for signs of danger. And that still isn't enough. Murder and assaults still happen. And then you get this dickhead guy Wayne, who everybody already knows was a dangerous creep. They even nicknamed him the rapist, and he still got to live freely, mistreating other people right up until when Sarah disappeared and ultimately paid the price for his shitty behavior. So Sarah's murder was the absolute last straw for a British feminist direct action group called Sisters Uncut. After her vigil was canceled, they held an unofficial one anyway. The service started out being pretty quiet, pretty peaceful. Mourners paid their respects by leaving flowers and gathering at the place on the street where she was last seen alive. Kate Middleton even showed up unexpectedly to grieve with the rest of the community, and she left Sarah a letter that she had written herself. But as the night went on, the crowd got bigger and bigger, and things began to escalate, and the vigil basically turned into a protest. Police officers started arresting people, and the mourners chanted at them saying, "Go away, murderers, arrest your own." It didn't help that Sarah's story was still in the news either, basically keeping attention on the case and making sure that the controversy was all still fresh. For example, after the detectives found the body, a witness came forward saying that they saw Wayne handcuffing Sarah the night that she went missing. She got into his car around 9:34 p.m., which was only a few minutes after she finished talking to her boyfriend Josh on the phone. So it sounded like Wayne must have either shown her his badge or had his uniform on, and that he somehow convinced Sarah to get into the backseat of his car, even though the rental wasn't a squad car. I mean, it might have looked like one and Sarah might not have looked closely enough, but he could have also said, "Hey, I'm a cop. Trust me, I'll get you home. You shouldn't be walking at this late hour." Or if he was saying she was under arrest, you might think, why would Sarah believe that she was under arrest? I mean, if she wasn't breaking any laws, it would be really weird for a police officer to take her into custody. But some people have speculated that maybe Wayne tried to say that Sarah was breaking COVID restrictions. I mean, the rules around lockdown in London were super intense. People were supposed to stay inside. They were not supposed to go over to other people's houses. In fact, when he was actually on duty and doing his job, one of Wayne's responsibilities was to find and arrest people who were breaking the shelter-at-home orders that were out there because of COVID. So Sarah might have thought that it was normal for her to get in trouble for being out, when she was only supposed to be leaving her apartment when it was absolutely necessary. Especially because she had just been over at a friend's house, which, remember, was kind of a bit of a no-no. Either way, though, given what we know from the security footage and from the witness statements, we can say that the kidnapping was really, really quick. It probably took Wayne less than 5 minutes to get Sarah into his car. But when the police questioned him after his arrest to ask if their theories were right and why he did it, Wayne didn't want to talk. They would show him Sarah's picture and ask him what he did to her, and Wayne only repeated, "No comment." The only thing he said when they tried to get a sense of his mental state and his motives was, "I'm in a dark place." Which this wasn't even news to the officers who were trying to interrogate him, because Wayne had apparently tried to self-harm himself when he was detained. That landed him in the hospital until somebody had decided that he was well enough to give an interview. And even during that interrogation, he had a big white bandage on his head because he hadn't fully recovered yet. When Wayne made his first virtual court appearance, it was over Zoom. He was signing in from Belmarsh Prison, which was a really high security facility, actually, and basically it's for the worst of the worst, and a lot of the higher profile suspects end up in there. Now for Wayne, that first appearance was pretty uneventful, quite honestly. Nobody asked him any hard-hitting questions. He just confirmed his name, his date of birth. The judge set his plea hearing for that July, and then his criminal trial was set for that October. But this part is unbelievable, because while Wayne was behind bars, get this, he was still collecting a paycheck. He definitely wasn't working as a police officer, but he was still getting paid as one, and the department hadn't even bothered to fire him. It just enrages me. Like, how on earth are you still collecting a paycheck? I get it, innocent until proven guilty, sure, but like you should be on unpaid leave at the very least. It just does not make sense to me. So the investigators working on the case had 6 months or so to go through all the hours of surveillance footage, all of the phone data, everything before they had to take everything to court. And basically, they used the time to confirm exactly what evidence they had and what they didn't have. And they needed to work out the timeline of Sarah's abduction. They learned that before Sarah disappeared, Wayne spent about a month going to London multiple times, all to get familiar with the area and scope out the best place to commit his crime. During that time, Wayne also bought a handcuff key set off of Amazon. He got carpet protector, he bought hairbands, which, like I mentioned before, I'm not exactly sure what the hairbands were for. The police never quite worked that out either. But they had two theories. He either used them as restraints, or they were used as a tool to help Wayne keep an erection. Now, around this time, Wayne also got into this weird habit of wearing his uniform when he was off duty, almost like he was practicing at tricking women into thinking that he was a safe person to talk to, or that he was maybe arresting them, whatever it may be. And people even noticed this. They joked with him about it, asking him if it was a sex thing, which from the sound of things, it was. It was just a lot creepier and more violent than I think anybody even realized. And as we already know, Wayne made reservations for that rental car a week before the murder. He picked it up on March 1st, which was 3 days before Sarah's disappearance. And during those 3 days, whenever he was off duty, he would drive that rental car up and down the street, like he was looking for someone to target. And then after working his long shift on the day of the kidnapping, he drove home and he dropped off his regular car. He picked up that rental, made the long trip back to London, where he parked and waited for just an unsuspecting woman to go by. And if you're wondering, didn't Wayne's wife wonder where he was during all of this time? He apparently told her that he was still working. Even after that super long shift that he had already worked during the day, he said that he had overtime, he had more to do, and she didn't question it. And before I go any further, in case it wasn't clear, Wayne didn't know Sarah. It's not like he targeted her specifically. Instead, it sounds like he just decided that he wanted to attack and then kill a woman. Any woman. Sarah was just unlucky enough to be walking down the same street that Wayne had chosen. It wasn't a random crime exactly. I mean, Wayne knew exactly what he was going to do and when and how he was going to do it. But in his mind, it wasn't about Sarah either. Once he saw Sarah, he pretended to arrest her and got her into his car. Then he drove to a secluded area in Dover and he parked. And I can't even imagine what was going through Sarah's mind during that long and agonizing car ride. Because at some point, I'm sure that it all clicked for her. She had to realize that she wasn't actually under arrest. This police officer that she was with wasn't taking her to the station to check her in. Something terrible was happening. It's still not clear exactly when and where she was murdered, but Wayne did admit to strangling her to death with his police belt. Then, the next day, he called someone up at the police station and requested a couple of days off. He said it was because he was under a lot of stress. And sure, everyone deals with stress differently, but it's pretty damn sketchy that surveillance cameras caught Wayne that same morning returning the rental car at 8:26 a.m. It really does drive home the fact that this murder was premeditated. The only reason that he even rented this car in the first place was because he wanted to kidnap somebody in a car that looked like a police car and couldn't be so easily traced back to him. And now that he had murdered Sarah, mission accomplished, right? He didn't need this rental anymore. So then later that morning, he drove to Sandwich, Kent. And there, at 9:21 a.m., more surveillance footage showed him throwing something into the water. As soon as the police saw that clip, they sent a diver to search a stream in the area. And that's where they finally found Sarah's phone. The same day that he ditched the phone, another camera caught Wayne buying 2 big green bags at a store in Dover, just like the bags that Sarah's burned body was found inside. The next day, he was filmed buying a gas can and filling it up at the station. And as we know, thanks to a witness in the area, flames were spotted in Hode's Woods later that same day at 12:15 p.m. The area that the witness described wasn't too far from where that fridge was found, which again was very close to Wayne's property. There was one last key thing that Wayne did that day. He sent an email to work saying that he didn't want to carry a gun anymore. Now, since this email came in right on the heels of the other one where he said that he was stressed out, the department ended up giving him 4 days of leave. And during those 4 days, he took his brand new blue tarp and bungee net, asked his kids if they wanted to come out to that remote wooded area that he owned, and while the children were all running around having a great time, totally oblivious to what their dad was up to, he went off and he dumped Sarah's burned remains. So if it's hard to keep track, he killed her one day, burned her body a few days after that, then waited a couple more days to take the body out of the fridge and then bag it up and dump it in the woods. And as a reminder, Wayne owned this property, and it was huge. So if you're picturing a small yard, think again. Wayne was far enough away from his wife and his kids that none of them noticed when he wandered off with a burned up body. It was crazy. Then he just acted all fine and normal when everybody piled back into the car and they headed home. The only sign that anything was wrong or different was that when Wayne was due to finally head back to work, he decided not to. He called in sick. Now, whether that's because of his guilt and it was catching up to him, or if he was just exhausted from, committing a murder and covering it up, your guess is as good as mine. But that's the timeline. I mean, to the extent that anybody was able to figure it out. But the investigators still hadn't determined Sarah's actual cause of death. They had Wayne's confession, but I don't blame anybody for not wanting to take him at his word. And unfortunately, her final autopsy came back as inconclusive. The police ordered a second autopsy, which revealed that Sarah had in fact been strangled to death, and it matched what Wayne said. And a week after that came out, Wayne reported to court again. Once more via a video call, but this time, he was pleading guilty to kidnapping and sexually assaulting Sarah. Now, weirdly enough, he had also admitted that he had murdered her at that appearance, but for whatever reason, the judge didn't want him to enter a plea for the murder charge until a different arraignment, which was still going to be about a month away. So everybody waited a few more weeks, and then he pled guilty to the murder too. And a week later, a week after that, he was finally fired from his job at the police department. But again, it wasn't until this guy literally pled guilty to murder, after he had already confessed to it, plus the kidnapping and the sexual assaults, it wasn't until all of that the department finally decided, hey, maybe we shouldn't keep this guy employed as a police officer anymore. I mean, it just absolutely blows my mind. So officially, he was let go for failing to live up to the standards that officers are supposed to have. That was the official reason, guys, which, you think? Wayne's sentencing hearing took place over 2 days in September of 2021. And that is when it also came out that Wayne had an online dating profile. It was full of lies. I mean, besides saying he wasn't married and didn't have kids, Wayne also used a fake name and a fake address. Now, I don't know if Wayne was just cheating on his wife and using this account to meet women, or if it was another way of him finding victims. I mean, if he did harm anyone that he had matched up with, they might not have spoken up because it would have been hard for them to realize that this guy's real name was Wayne Cousins and that he was the same person that they had gone on a date with who had a totally different name. But either way, it just shows one more sign that Wayne was just a total and complete scumbag. Except his team was trying to argue that because Wayne had confessed and cooperated, the court should go easy on him. A few police officers even came in and gave character references, basically saying what a great guy Wayne was. Which was weird, because we know he wasn't great at all, and officers had nicknamed him something horrific. It just made no sense. Wayne's lawyer also said that at the time of the murder, Wayne was having financial problems. Remember, he was in debt about 29,000 pounds, like I mentioned before. And according to the lawyer, he also didn't get enough sleep. Wayne could also have been suffering from undiagnosed depression, and on top of that, he also apparently had pretty bad tinnitus, which is like a ringing in your ear, a ringing in your ear, not sleeping, it doesn't make you go out and murder somebody. Certainly not. It doesn't make you go out, sexually assault, murder somebody, stuff them in a refrigerator, burn their body. No. And the truth of the matter is that there was just too much damning evidence against Wayne. He didn't snap out of nowhere because of ringing in his ear or depression or financial stress. Wayne had a long history of inappropriate and predatory behavior, and he was very methodical in the way that he planned and then committed Sarah's murder. There was way too much evidence that he had set everything up in advance for him to just act like it was some spontaneous thing that just happened because of stress. Plus, Sarah's mother, father, and sister all read their victim impact statements, which were absolutely heartbreaking. They asked Wayne to look at them while they were reading, but just like the coward he was, he kept his head down the entire time. Sarah's sister Katie said, "You disposed of my sister's body like it was rubbish, like she meant nothing. She meant everything. We couldn't even see her, she was so badly burnt. Her brain was removed from her skull to check for trauma and cause of death. I still don't know if they put her brain back in her head or whether it is lying next to her body in her coffin. Shards of her kneecap were returned to us to be placed with her body. Shards that you had knocked when moving her burnt body from the fridge that you had used to hide and conceal the fire. We are still missing her hyoid bone from her throat, which is being checked to see the force that you used to strangle her. We need this to determine how long she may have survived. We know it was broken. Her burnt body still had her necklace and one earring in her ear. The other had fallen from her ear because it had burnt off. You hear from the police that it takes around 2 minutes to strangle someone and around 8 to 10 seconds for them to lose consciousness. At first, there is a sense of relief at hearing that your sister might have only been aware of what was happening for 8 to 10 seconds. But have you put your hands around your neck and tried pushing hard? 8 to 10 seconds now seems like a long time. And this absolutely breaks my heart because even after everything that the police had learned about Sarah's murder with the timeline and with everything else, there were still so many unknowns. I mean, let me repeat what Katie said. Her sister didn't even know which of Sarah's body parts were in her body when she was buried. It was a nightmare. So Wayne was sentenced to life in prison. And in the UK, that is really rare. It's literally only given to the worst of the worst. And on top of that, he will never get parole. Plus, he was also sentenced to 19 months for some of his indecent exposure acts. So luckily, Wayne is never going to have the opportunity to harm or murder anybody again. He has tried to appeal, but none of those appeals have worked out for him. He's currently serving his life sentence at HM Prison in Franklin, Durham. And that prison that he's in, it's pretty scary. I mean, its nickname is Monster Mansion. So I can't imagine how hellish that place is, especially if you're a cop, because the inmates are terrorists, murderers, and sexually violent criminals. So the name fits, and in my opinion, he's right where he belongs. However, as terrifying as the prison might sound, I don't necessarily think that Wayne is having an awful time, because apparently he was allowed to buy an Xbox for himself due to good behavior. But apparently he got pissed afterward because he wasn't allowed to get a violent shooter game to play on it. I mean, privileged much? I can't. The fact that you even get to play games in prison is like beyond me. Wayne's now ex-wife Elena has managed to live a relatively normal and quiet life ever since Wayne's arrest. She still lives in the same town, and she's focusing on raising her children and trying to keep things feeling as normal as possible. She's done some interviews, and from the sounds of it, she's baffled by his violent history. I guess nobody ever really clued her into all of the vile things that he did leading up to Sarah's murder. And at one point, she told a reporter, "I keep on asking why. What Wayne did wasn't human behavior." And as for Sarah's family, friends, and her boyfriend Josh, they paid tribute to her a year after her death. Their statement said, "Our lives have changed forever, and we live with the sadness of our loss. Sarah was wonderful, and we miss her all the time. Over the past year, we have been overwhelmed with the kindness shown to us, not just by family and friends, but by the wider public. We are immensely grateful to everyone for their support. It has meant such a lot to us and has comforted us through all this terrible time." It's absolutely heartbreaking. Sarah should be well into adulthood, planning a family, a life, all of the things, and this was just taken from her by somebody who was supposed to be trusted by her and the rest of the community. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because like I said, it has been very controversial, especially the protest piece of it and women's rights and all of that, but also because people are wondering, how did he slip under the radar for so long? How was he never held accountable? And then you have the whole other side of it of like, why wasn't he fired? Why wasn't he put on leave even after the arrest? I mean, there's a lot of differing opinions out there. Personally, my opinion is the police fumbled the ball every step of the way, before the disappearance, after, the whole way. How do you nickname a fellow police officer what they nicknamed him and not have a red flag going? But I don't know if I'm like the outsider and all that, because from what I've seen online, there are a lot of people who are saying like, police just went by protocol. They all have weird nicknames for each other. There wasn't any proof. And I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that. So like I said, please keep it respectful in the comments, but I definitely want to know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode and for hearing Sarah's story. And until the next one, guys, stay safe.